Well, Little Abner may not be back at Sadie Hawkins, but Irv Homer's back here on Friday night, ladies and gentlemen, March the 6th, 2009. As you can tell from my voice, it's been 2 weeks of hell with this cold viral infection, whatever it is. Apparently, it's spreading all over the country. People I talk to from all over the country, and in fact, some of the foreign countries. Apparently, there's some type of virus or whatever the hell it is, I don't know. But it has taken its toll on my voice. Not that I've got that great a voice, but the problem is that I may, during the program here, start coughing. And for those of you who are familiar with this type of problem, you'll have to forgive me. And if you don't, I really don't care, because this is the best that I've got to offer. Once again, we're broadcasting from IrvHomer.com. Website is www.irvhomer.com. My email address for you to email, and I've received some very complimentary email in the last 2 weeks, and I do appreciate it. Unfortunately, I can't answer them all, but I want you to know that all of your emails are read and stored and filed, and I refer to them from time to time, and I do thank you for all the complimentary emails that I received. I very seldom, in fact, I've never received any hate mail since I've been doing this program, and it's almost a year.
Yeah, really?
Which is kind of mind-boggling, because I guess most people agree with what I have to say, but if you disagree, we can do it in an agreeable way.
Well, okay, that one was referred to this show. We had that one.
Well, we're entitled to a call. People don't not necessarily like to hear what you have to say, and so they have a right to send negative emails, mostly with constructive criticism, I add. Once again, we have a phone number here that you can call in if you so desire, and that's 215-253-8877, 215-253-8877. I've been sitting patiently, screaming, I suppose, at the radio and the television and this whole business with the Obama administration since the first Tuesday in November of 2008. Now, the man promised that there was going to be change. He didn't tell you whether it was going to be for better or for worse. He said there was going to be a change, that the country couldn't continue going in the direction that it is, or the direction that it was. And so there were many proposals made, and many bloviators screaming about they know how to fix the country. Well, this is a worldwide problem. I think that the president right now, Barack Obama, is in way over his head. What makes it worse is that he has taken the leftovers of the Clinton administration and is trying to implement Clinton policy with the present situation the way it is. When you realize that James Carville and that Paul Begala and some of the old line Clinton boys, who during the time that Clinton was the president of the United States were adequate, they're not adequate today. But a lot of things are coming out in this administration that I'm not happy with. As you know, you don't know who I voted for, and you will not know who I voted for, and it's none of my business who you voted for. My main concern is the President of the United States and the Congress of the United States doing the best they can to make this country survive. I personally don't feel, ladies and gentlemen, these are my comments, I don't think that the people in this country realize the gravity of the situation yet. And why do I say that? It is not the topic of conversation. So I would like to know from you, if you want to avail yourself of the chat room and the telephone, whether you feel gloom and doom because of what you hear or what is said on radio or from your personal experience. Now, every night at the news, I watch Charlie Gibson, and he shows a family in Texas who both the husband and wife lost their job working with Microsoft. And they have 4 youngsters, and they're eating pizza. They're not going out to McDonald's anymore. She's been out of work 6 months. He's been out of work 5 months. And you see them with their mortgage foreclosure. They see a pile of bills. And then you see a businessman in Texas who makes and manufactures cowboy hats. He's had 40 employees. I think he's now down to 15 employees. But yet driving around Philadelphia, in the suburban area of Philadelphia where I drove today, highways are jammed, gas stations are full, McDonald's is full, parking lots outside of the Chamonix Mall or the Chamonix Mall where I had to stop today at Walmart was full, parking lot was full. So I wonder if you're suffering from the same denial or whatever this thing is that seems to be affecting us. It just doesn't seem that when we hear the news and drive around the streets that it seems to be affecting the people the way the market is down to 6,500, which I predicted. I have the old archives tapes to prove it. The market will go down more than 6,500. I made a prediction then when it was 14,000 and people thought I was crazy. I predicted 6,500. I will make a prediction now that if the market doesn't show, and I'm not an investment broker, so don't take my word for anything other than my opinion. This is strictly my opinion. I figure that by the end of March, the end of April, if the market doesn't show a precipitous increase, the market will close for a 2-week holiday. That there will be a cessation of trading on the American Stock Exchange, followed by at least 100 days of a bank holiday. This is the biggest crapshoot of economics that this country has ever tried. The old theory is that if you make it, you're a hero, and if you don't, you're a bum. And what this administration and our politicians are doing are taking a crapshoot, hoping that this thing will work. I hope it works. I'm not Rush Limbaugh hoping that the program fails. Because if the program fails, we fail. But my personal opinion is that if this thing doesn't swing around, there's no question in my mind that there will be a bank holiday in this country and that there will in fact be a closing of the stock market. It has been done before. Let me tell you something else, and we'll get to the chat room and to the telephone, 215-253-8877. Hillary Clinton now, under the Obama administration, is the Secretary of State. She is now swimming in dangerous water with the sharks. The sharks being the government of Iran, and the sharks being the government of Russia. And I hear the bloviators saying you can't negotiate with these people, and they're right. But what is the alternative, ladies and gentlemen, except try and negotiate with these people and make the best deal that you can make? However, can we be the toughest guy on the block when we've been involved in a no-win war for 8 years? Our military is now on the second and third tour of duty in Afghanistan and Iraq. We have no backup army. We have very limited capability of an offensive war. What is our alternative except try to negotiate? I want to refresh your memory a little bit and go back to statements like shock and awe, and go back to slam dunk, or mission accomplished. Well, none of those things came to be a reality. That was the illusion and dream of the George Bush administration with Donald Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney. That illusionary slam dunk and mission accomplished and bring it on. You forget those days? I don't forget them. Well, that illusion blew up because we're still there with 140,000 troops and 150,000 civilians. And we're still not out of there yet. And now we've got another dreamer in the White House, Barack Obama, who has another dream of spending trillions of dollars on money that we don't have, that we can't even borrow it for anybody because we borrowed up to our neck. The dream of the slam dunk and the dream of the mission accomplished and the dream of the bring it on is a nightmare, and this situation is going to be a nightmare. And that's why I make a prediction that the banks will have a holiday. The banks will close in America. There's no question in my mind about it. And the stock market will cease. And at the point, you must remember that in a crisis, you can now see changes that are made in government policy that can't be done during the time when there is no crisis. Legislation is passed during wartime that could never get through. Well, now we're both in an economic crisis and a military crisis. And the people will beg to have dramatic unconstitutional laws passed, promises made, and finances made that don't add up. So hang on to your shorts, ladies and gentlemen, because you're in for a long ride. We have no military to fight a war. We have no money to fight a war. We can't borrow any money to fight a war. We have no manufacturing plants to build war materiel. Our planes are exhausted for the last 8 years of flying over deserts. The only thing we've got is a Navy with outdated ships. We've got one aircraft carrier and we've got one battleship. And this is all done with the acquiescence of the American stupid people who yelled support our, remember support our troops 8 years ago? Everybody had a flag on their car. And we had rallies all over the United States. Whatever happened to support our troops and the rallies to support our troops? Well, you wanted to support the troops in this no-win war, so now you're paying for it. The reason the private sector is broke and there is no credit is because the last 8 years of this war has sucked the economy dry. The government has sucked the finances out of the United States private sector, and there's nothing there. They've not only sucked the real cash and the surplus after the Clinton administration, but they've sucked the cash and they've also sucked the credit. Well, how can you, Mr. Businessman, borrow money for your business when the government has borrowed the money before you? You ever think about that? The United States comes to me and says, I need money. And Mr. Joe Businessman, General Motors or Ford or Chrysler, somebody comes to me and says, we need money too. Who do you think I'm going to loan the money to? Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler, they can't print money. The United States government can print all the money it wants to. And so I will loan money to you. And that's why the Japanese and the Chinese have loaned money to the United States. And that's why there's no money for you, Mr. Businessman, to borrow money. And that's why Mr. and Mrs. Credit Card is trying to make deals to pay off their debt. There is no money to pay off your debt. It's been sucked dry. You can't fight a war for 8 years, day in and day out. $10 million a week for 8 years. And expect there to be credit? Expect there to be cash available? Are you people crazy? It's absolutely mind-boggling. Now the whole big thing is the stimulus package. Let's address that a little bit. The fraud of the Obama administration is the budget, which is separate from the TARP or separate from the stimulus package. It's got 9,000 pieces of pork in it. And people said to me today, well, Irv, what do you think of the pork? I said, what's the difference? What do you mean, what's the difference? The difference is that American pork is spent to create jobs for Americans. Spending $150 billion, no, $1,500,000 to study the odor of pigs in North Dakota. Sounds outrageous, doesn't it? Do you know he created 35 jobs to study the methane manure smell from pigs in North Dakota? Now it's amazing, for 8 years we sat idly by while we had a stimulus package under the Bush administration for Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan at $10 million a week looking for Osama bin Laden, $900 million to Africa to clear up AIDS, money to South Korea, money to South Vietnam. Yeah, South Vietnam, North Vietnam too. That was a stimulus package for those countries. Did I hear any of the Republicans or any of the Democrats screaming about that stimulus package to the rest of the world? To the Middle East? To Israel? To Egypt? Now Hillary Clinton is over there giving a $900 million stimulus package to the Hamas in the Gaza Strip. We've been stimulating the whole world, and Boobus America, Democrats and Republicans sat on their ass saying, oh, well, we'll give them $900 million, we'll give them $100. Now when it comes to stimulating America's economy for $3 trillion, now the idiots are screaming and yelling. The Rush Limbaughs and the Sean Hannitys, a stimulus package. Isn't it better that Americans spend money on Americans and create American jobs? Do I care if they have flush toilets in Baghdad? I don't care. They've been pooping on the streets for 2,000 years. What do I care now if they have a flush toilet? Do I care if they have diseases in Africa? They don't take advantage of the missionaries over there. So we've been stimulating the whole world since the end of World War II. But those stimulus packages, they're fine. It's only when we want to stimulate the economy in America that you find it bad. But I'd much rather stimulate the economy here than stimulate it in Afghanistan or stimulate it somewhere in Iraq. The Iraqis like their dictator. What the hell was it our business to go in there? The death this week of a man in Philadelphia who was one of the legends, I guess, of Philadelphia talk radio, a man by the name of Frank Ford. We saw his name in the paper. His name was Eddie Feldman. Frank Ford was the spokesperson for the Frankfurt grocery chain, and so took the name of Frank Ford many, many years ago. I knew Frank well. I worked with him, never for him, but I worked with him. We had many a disagreement in our careers, and I worked with him about 20 years. The one thing I can say about Frank is that he was a professional broadcaster. He was a great interviewer, and as I said to his wife, who was the district attorney of Philadelphia, who I've known for many, many years, Lynn Abram, I said, you're a hell of a lawyer and a hell of a district attorney. It's just that you had lousy taste in men. And we were very dear friends. And on behalf of the District Attorney of Philadelphia, Lynn Abram, I know that he'll be missed. And it was a voice that was needed right now on American radio because he was a professional liberal, a liberal with sanity. So that is my comments about Frank Ford. Once again, I make a prediction. Don't hold me to it. I'm not an investment advisor, but I know the nature of economics. That I predict by the end of April, if the economy doesn't make a drastic turnaround, that we will have a bank holiday and the market will have a holiday for about 2 weeks. Let's go to our chat room and see what is on our chat room. Russia's audience has doubled since the White House controversy. Unfortunately, the other day, he said something profound, and that is that the people who got us into this economic crisis are graduates who are graduated thinking that they are smarter than the rest of us and better than the rest of us. Well, Mr. Limbaugh is suddenly bragging about the fact that he has no college degree. But then again, neither did P.T. Barnum, and neither did Adolf Hitler, and neither did Benito Mussolini, and neither did Napoleon, and neither did Alexander the Great. But Mr. Limbaugh is making $110 million from the people who did graduate. So I can assume, if that was his comment, that the idiots who are graduates are idiots enough to pay him $110 million a year. So Mr. Limbaugh, be thankful for the graduates, since they're that stupid to pay you that kind of money. You see the difference, ladies and gentlemen? The controversy of Rush Limbaugh, and I had it. I suggest you watch Inside Story this week at 11:30 on Channel 6. It will be most interesting. My comments about Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity and the other conservative right-wing talk show hosts has been stated many, many times on this air. I want to equate the caliber of talk show hosts when I first got into the business compared to the bloviators and windbags that are on the air today. The Frank Fords, the Joel A. Spivaks, the Bob Menefees, the Ed Harveys, the Bill Corsairs, the Dominic Quinns. I won't mention myself, although I did have an appreciable good following. I still do today. But they were men of character and men of class. And you learn something from those people. And there was a certain warmth and a certain sincerity about them. What is on the air today, in my opinion, on syndicated radio is a disgrace. They're carnival men. They're not talk show hosts. They're carnival people. They take the human factor and know how to manipulate it. And you are being manipulated. You're being entertained. You're not being informed. You're not learning anything. Irv, I am seeing the same thing around town as you, yet I've seen a 50% drop in most of my clients' sales figures since 1208. What I see is that people are living on credit cards. I've seen most clients making payroll with credit card advances. Sal from Langhorne. Well, you're absolutely right, Sal, and that's why I said, when the credit card tips out, and the credit cards have all been maxed out, where are they going to get the money to continue their business? And that's why I say there will be a bank holiday. Now, two of the growth industries, if you listen to advertising on radio today, and even television, but mostly on radio, if you owe the government $10,000 or more, get in touch with us and we can cut your taxes down. And you hear these people saying, I owed $135,000 in taxes and the government, through this company that's advertising, has reduced my tax liability to $10,000. Well, if that goes across the board, and the government was anticipating $150,000 from this one taxpayer, and they only got 10 grand, they're not getting the anticipated revenue that they anticipated. So the growth industry in America today on radio advertising, in the papers, you'll see it, is we'll show you how to reduce your taxes if you owe money to the IRS. The other thing is, and we have it right here on the program here on the Irv Homer Show, how not to pay your credit cards. That's a growth industry. Are you in debt more than $10,000 on your credit card? Contact us. We'll show you how to do it. So how long is this bubble going to continue, Sal, before it breaks? It's got to blow up. As I said, when it comes to credit, I would rather give the government credit through bonds, municipal bonds, 30-year treasuries, than loan it to General Motors. Well, if the government sucks all the credit, cash available in this country, there's no cash left for the private sector, so the private sector is going to go belly up. You can only play with those credit cards so long. Eventually, they're going to tap out, Sal. Now, if the bloviators really were against the taxes and against this thing, why don't they just say don't pay your taxes? If Limbaugh and Hannity and these other people are concerned about saving America, don't pay your taxes. Are you too much of a coward, Limbaugh, to say that? Has Limbaugh ever suggested once, and I use his name because he's the one that wanted to challenge the President of the United States, and let's put things in perspective. Limbaugh may have 20 million listeners. I don't know where that figure came from. May have. I don't know. That's an awful lot of people. But I do know that Obama won by 70 million. That's 50 million more people, Rush, than you have as listeners. So if Mr. Limbaugh is so brave, why don't he put his money where his mouth is? Why don't he just say, let's have a tax revolt? He's a coward. He wouldn't do it. To the telephones. Hello, how are you?
Hi, Irv. This is Sal from Langhorne.
Hello, Sal. How are you?
Good. How are you? How
Good.
you feeling, Irv?
Pretty good, thank you.
Feeling better?
Yeah, a lot better, thanks.
Thank God. I just wanted to call and let you know I totally agree with what you said, and I could see the handwriting on the wall. It's looking ugly.
Well, it's looking ugly because the solution is a shot of adrenaline. It's a difference. I make an equation, Sal, between an alcoholic who drinks and drinks and drinks and drinks and finally gets drunk. A drug addict must get an immediate shot of heroin in his veins. In my opinion, the stimulus package is a shot of heroin in the economic vein of America, and it's not going to work.
Well, it's just going to exacerbate the problem, Irv, in my opinion.
It's going to mask it. It's going to credit card the debt. It is going to amortize the debt that is going to be impossible to pay back. And if the stimulus doesn't work, then what?
Well, I think your bank holiday is an inevitability. I really do. I think you hit the nail on the head on that one.
In my opinion, Sal, the initial problem is cash and the banking industry in America. Those are the two economic fire engines that keep the economy going. Not General Motors, not Ford, not Chrysler. They can take the hit, but the banking industry that handles the currency of this country cannot afford to take the hit because that affects us all.
Without a question. It's a credit-run society, Irv, you know?
Well, the whole big thing today is a businessman used to talk, how was business last week? And, well, it was good. Now how's your credit? Now now the whole big thing is, what's your credit score? It used to be, you used to go to the country club, it used to be, what's your golf score? Now,
everybody's busy trying to protect it. Right?
Yeah, now everybody says, what's your credit score? No, my golf score is, no, I don't know what's your credit score? And how much did Bernie Madoff get you for? That's the big thing. Well, hang in, my dear friend. It's going to get worse, I can assure you that.
All right, take care.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Okay, to our, yes, sir, question.
Yes, I have a question now.
Yeah.
Going on your statement that you said the banks are going to take a holiday.
Right.
Except, does this also mean that since I'm pretty sure that all banks have off-hours banking where you can use a Mac card.
They'll
or
shut
use a
them
check.
down. They'll shut them all down.
They'll shut them down.
I would suggest, and that's a good question because it leads into another one, Ron. I would suggest that you read the FEMA Act, the Federal Emergency Management Act. Get a copy of that. Now, that is not a conspiracy, ladies and gentlemen, and it's not something initiated by the right wing in America or the left wing or the Democrats or the Republicans. The Federal Emergency Management Act gives the government unlimited powers once through the acquiescence of the Democrats and the Republicans that there is a national emergency that gives the president, with the oversight of the Congress, unlimited powers where he can shut the banks, he can almost postpone habeas corpus. Lincoln instituted the part of the Federal Emergency Management Act when, don't forget, Lincoln, the greatest president that we claim, eliminated the right of habeas corpus during the Civil War. So if you want to know and exactly how much power the president can get in a national emergency, get a copy of the Federal Emergency Management Act. Now, you may be able to get it off your computer. If not, you can write to the Superintendent of Documents in Washington, D.C., and get a copy of the FEMA Act. And it'll scare the living daylights out of you. Now, you must also remember that the relocation centers of World War II, in which the Japanese were incarcerated in, has never been repealed. And the correlation that I see between extending the unemployment compensation from 25 weeks to 52 weeks and to putting all this stimulus money into the system, you better be thankful that they're doing it. It may not be fiscally sound, and it may not be the best way to solve this problem. But I'll tell you one thing. If this stimulus package, that money isn't spread out, you're going to have riots in the streets of America. You're going to have people occupying houses without paying for the mortgage. You're going to have people stealing electricity and gas from the gas. They're not going to pay their bills, period. So we're going to have anarchy in the streets of America unless we prime that pump. We better put maybe another $5 trillion into the economy to pacify the natives. We've lived pretty good for a long period of time since the end of World War II. And people are not going to want to give up that second car. And people aren't going to want to take SEPTA. And people aren't going to want to give up those lattes for $4 a drink. And people aren't going to move in with one another. And people aren't going to go to, they don't want to wear them cheap clothes anymore. We got used to wearing them $100 sneakers. You're not going to be happy wearing them $20 sneakers.
Another correction. Going on to the same concept about the banks being shut down and using the Visa. Now, does this also mean that when you try to purchase something, you'll only be able to use cash during that time?
You'll be able to draw a certain amount of cash from your account. You won't lose your money.
Right.
But you won't be able to take a lot of money out at one time.
Okay, what I'm saying is well, if you go and purchase something with a credit card or a bank card, will you be able to use that, or will you not? You will have to spend cash.
It depends on the mechanics of how they set up. You can get a draft from the bank for the money and take that draft to buy something. Similar bank credit. Like if FEMA says you can only take $200 a week out, you can take that $200 draft out and cash that $200 draft, which would be a bank check, actually. Wouldn't confiscate your money. Now, you must remember that most of the countries around the world, when they immigrate to the United States, we have a cousin who married an English podiatrist, married him in London, and he retired. He had a very lucrative practice in London. And when Brian moved to the islands, Brian moved to St. Croix, and we visited him down there. And Brian married my cousin, and They live very comfortably down there, and he practices his skill as a podiatrist on St. Croix Island, handling most of the Hess refinery folks. But he was only permitted to take X number of dollars a year out of England. He couldn't take all of his money out at one time. You can't take all of the money out of Russia at one time. You can't take all your money out of Germany at one time. Only America, you can take all your money out at one time. So that look forward to be stopped. We are dry because of guns and butter. Guns and butter explain. Well, guns and butter is simple. It means that you either have guns and you have rationing of your finances, or you don't. Well, the guns and butter was proven to be a mistake during the Vietnam War, which we're still paying for. We're still paying for the Vietnam War, believe it or not. That is still part of our national debt. So we did not suffer. I remember during the Vietnam War, I screamed on the air, I said, the World Series is playing, the Super Bowl is playing, and we've got 55,000 guys dead in Vietnam, and not one person in America, with the exception of those people who had relatives, sons, daughters, whoever was in Vietnam, were suffering. But we were doing great during the Vietnam War. There was no recession, there were plenty of jobs, so we had a couple million guys over in Vietnam getting their ass killed. Who cared? Because we had guns and butter. There was no sacrifice. There was no oil shortage. There was no shortage of food. There was no butter rationing. And we got the same war with Iraq and Afghanistan. The only difference is this one's sucking us dry. Because we didn't have the butter to begin with. Irv is correct about the cost of war sucking the life out of the economy. The Obama budget actually has the cost of the war in the budget for the first time. When people are screaming about the size of the proposed budget, they're actually seeing the war expense included. Well, they had to do it because the Bush administration was hiding it for all those years. Nothing in the Bush budget was ever proposed with the separate appropriations were made every 2 years for the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. Now what Obama did was put the war budget and the debt that was accrued during the war in his budget. And this is where the big problem come in. You can't hide it eventually. The Bush administration was doing a tap dance, a song and dance, smoke and mirrors, the dog and pony show. What sacrifice was made for the last 8 years by anybody in this country? Did you? I didn't sacrifice one damn thing. I didn't sacrifice one damn thing. We were paying $4 for a gallon of gasoline, paying $30 for a dinner, $50 for a dinner, going to casinos, blowing a couple $100 at casinos, taking a cruise, having a World Series, spending money. Who sacrificed during this Iraq, Iran war, Vietnam, whatever war it is? Don't even know that. We've been in so damn many wars, I don't know which one we're at now. But nobody suffered. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're paying for the Korean War, which has never been, the debt's never been paid off. We're paying for the Vietnam War, which has never been paid off. We're paying for the Grenada War, which has never paid off. We're paying off the Panama Canal fiasco that was never paid off. We're paying off the Iraq and Afghanistan War that'll never be paid off. But were the American people ever called upon to make one sacrifice? What the hell did you sacrifice? Oh, in 1972 we had a gas shortage under the Carter administration, remember? What a tragedy it was. We had a sacrifice. While we were losing 55,000 men in Vietnam and over 100,000 wounded, we were bitching because we had to wait a half an hour to get a tank full of gas. So we Americans have been spoiled and spoiled rotten because we don't give a rat's ass about our servicemen unless you're directly involved. And the politicians know it. And that's why they pull the shit that they pull, pardon the expression. Because they know that they can get away with it because the people are oriented toward one thing. The Eagles, the Phillies, the Detroit Lions, the Texas Aggies. Ba, 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 ba. Let's go to the telephones on the Irv Homer Show. Good evening. How are you?
Good evening, Irv. Jim in Hatfield. I'm glad you're back on the air and you're feeling a lot better.
Thank you, Jim.
I work at retail and I just see the people coming into our store and going out. and they're completely indifferent to the cares and wishes of anybody else. They don't care. And that's probably what's wrong with this country, because, taking care of your fellow man has become I guess, a curse rather than a nicety. And it's unfortunate it's gotten to this point. But what I want to talk to you about, I remember when Hitler came into Germany, he had owed all these bills because Germany had to pay for the cost of World War One.
Mm-hmm.
What he did, I believe, was just tell the German people in the world, we don't owe you anything. We're going to start out from scratch. Now, I'm sure that wouldn't work in a climate like today. I'm sure you would have riots in the street. What do you think?
Well, the history of Germany after World War I, because of the Versailles Treaty, wanted to make Germany an agrarian country in which they were not permitted to have any military whatsoever, and they would become the breadbasket of Europe with wheat and corn and all type of vegetation there. And that was not endemic to the German people. The German people were industrialists. The German people were inventors. The German people were artists. They were musicians. They were skilled craftsmen. And so it was a total culture shock, and Hitler saw that culture shock. And when Hitler got together, when he formed the whole basis of National Socialism, which was a joke because it wasn't national, it wasn't socialized, he came up with an idea and said, we can build up our economy by borrowing money because of the potential that we had to manufacture. And so guess who loaned him $435 billion after World War?
U.S. of A.
The United States of America. We financed Adolf Hitler. We financed it because they said that Germany should be a bulwark against the Soviet Union, who had gone through the revolution against the Tsar, and they would be the bulwark against Russia. Without Germany being there, we would have to take over and fight Russia prior to World War II, which we almost did. It wasn't until the very end that Russia became an ally of the United States. So we financed Adolf Hitler, and he turned on us because he got to a point where he says, okay, we got all the military hardware that we need. We built up an air force. And as Werner von Braun told me once, he said, I invented the rockets for Hitler, but I didn't tell him to put the bombs on it. And so the history of World War II is a little different. But Willy Schacht, who was the finance minister for Adolf Hitler and for the Weimar Republic, used the same type of operation that we're using now. Now, as I said, and I don't want to mention this one, two things are going to happen in the future of this country. Number one, there's going to be a bank holiday. Number two, the stock market will shut for 2 weeks at least. Or number three, we are going to be forced to go to war and take the 4 million unemployed and put them in the military as Franklin Delano Roosevelt did in World War II.
Right, that's the only way we got out of the Depression was World War II.
That's right. It had nothing to do with his economic policy, had nothing to do with anything that he did. We put 10 million unemployed men in the military and fought World War II, and that's what took us out of the Depression, and what made the economy so flourish after World War II was we had to start building civilian goods. We had to build houses. We had to build automobiles. We had to build radios. We had to build television sets. We had to build all the things that we were rationed during World War II. So that's what brought us out of the Depression. It had nothing to do with the economic stimulus that Roosevelt instituted.
Unfortunately, as you said, we let all our manufacturing base go overseas, so we don't really have much left in that respect that we had after World War II.
Well, I agree, Frank. And one of the reasons that I object to the American manufacturer, it's a catch-22. If we bail them out, we'll create jobs for the American people. If we don't bail them out, it's going to cause a faster recession as we go down this snowball hill. But it was American industry who fought like mad with the United States government to get this OPIC bill passed, where they could go overseas and relocate in countries that had cheap labor sources, no environmental protection, no unemployment compensation, no benefits to the employees, and the United States would be the policeman for their investments. So I don't feel too bad for American industry that moved overseas now that they're hurting.
Neither do I.
It was their choice to move out of this country. Had they remained in this country, maybe they wouldn't need this stimulus bailout that they're going through right now.
I'm sure there wouldn't be.
Well, that's why I said I'm ambivalent about helping American industry. Yes, because it creates jobs, but two, they asked for it when they moved out of the country. Thanks, Jim, for calling.
Irv, have a great weekend.
Thank you, sir. Same to you. Irv, if you were president, what would you do to save our economy? Frank D. of Roxborough, Pennsylvania. The first thing I would do is fire everybody in the Federal Reserve System, demand that the United States government create debt-free money, pay off the debt to the Federal Reserve System, to China, to Japan, to any country that holds our debt, and pay it off with legal money printed, manufactured by the Congress of the United States according to the Constitution. That would eliminate a $5 trillion amortized debt for the next 10 years. We would pay off our debt with our own money. We do not need to borrow money from a private bank. That's the first thing I would do. That would be after a 2-week holiday. I would give the Federal Reserve System and the debtors that we owe money to an opportunity to say, we're bankrupt. How much will you take on a dollar? Will you take 50 cents on a dollar? Will you take 75 cents on a dollar? Because if we continue to go the way we are, you're going to get nothing. And I guarantee you we can make a deal with every country that we owe money to. Paid off by American dollars that are backed by American manufacturing ability and the intrinsic value of the United States, which is worth about $250 trillion. That would be the first thing I would do. Manufacture debt-free currency as spelled out in the Constitution of the United States. Number two, I would give no tax advantage to any American corporation that is outside the United States. If you have a company if you have a plant in Korea, South Vietnam, in the islands, you will pay the same tax rate on that profit as you pay when you're in the United States. There will be no advantage for you tax-wise to move out of this country. The third thing I would do is exactly what the IRS is doing now. They finally discovered there are 52 multi-billionaire corporations that have Swiss bank accounts. Now, these rich people that I hear about, and I have nothing against the rich. I wish I was one of them. And I wish people would throw darts at me. But I'm talking about the people who have no allegiance to boundaries of the United States. They're multinationalists, which means they can make money, they can do business with communists, with socialists, with capitalists, do business with anybody. These people have moved all of their investments overseas while living in the protection of the United States military and United States freedom and democracy that we have here in this country. And I would demand that Switzerland, the Caribbean islands, any of them, must divulge under a tax treaty every American that has sheltered their money overseas to avoid paying taxes in this country. If these multi-billionaires are so patriotic, why did they take their money and hide it in Swiss banks? Why did they take it and hide it in the Cayman Islands? Only the poor suckers like you and me, the small businessman, are patriotic where we don't go offshore. Our money's in our banks. The rich people money, they're not in the United States banks. They're in private countries like Switzerland. Well, now they finally issued subpoenas for 12 of the 52 high rollers. Why won't they reveal their names? Why won't the IRS reveal their names? But those are the things that I would institute. Create a debt-free currency. It will be, when you issue a dollar, you've got a dollar in your pocket. That dollar doesn't back $1,000 of Federal Reserve notes. That dollar is a dollar's worth of goods and services and commodities in the United States. Number two, give none of these corporations who fled the United States any tax breaks overseas. You make a profit over there, you'll pay the same income tax rate as you pay here in the United States. And number three, go after these guys where the money has been removed. And number four, may I add, let's look into these endowments and these trust funds that have been set up by the multi-rich, people that you never even know who they are, Stotesburys and the Rockefellers and the Harrimans. They've taken in 1913 billions of dollars out of the Annenbergs, billions of dollars out of circulation in tax-exempt endowments and foundations. Let's put that money back into the tax-assessed situation. Yes, you can have a certain amount of money, 30, 40, 50 million dollars. But when you realize there's 300, 400, 500, 600 million dollars in some of these endowments that are tax-free and pays for their places like the Kennedys up in Hyannisport, well, you and I scratch our behind because we can't hide 5 cents from the IRS. You're afraid the IRS is going to steal it? Those are the things that have to be done in this country. And I know it's going to hurt, and I know there's going to be a lot of bitching and bitching. But that's my opinion. Irv, I think the dollar will fall. The only way to avoid the dollar is gold. Do you see the government confiscating gold as Roosevelt did in 1932? Do you see gold going higher? Thanks. I will not make a prediction on gold because I don't believe in hard currency. You can't take gold to the supermarket and buy a dozen eggs with it. Even if you have inflated dollars, you can still buy with the eggs. My theory is on the amount of money that's available and whether or not gold is going to go up or not. I don't know whether gold's going to go up or not. I only say this. If you buy gold at any price and it goes up $100 an ounce, dump it. Take the $100 profit. Wait, it goes down again. Goes down again, buy it, then buy it when it. That's gold you play with. If you want to play with something, play with the international currency, which is a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week cycle. See, one of the other things that has happened with currency in the world is that currency has become a commodity. And if you take a look at the commodity trading that's not published in the paper and is very seldom shown on the networks, you can take $1 million and trade money all day long as the currency goes up in Germany, up in Russia, down in Russia, up in Dubai, down in Dubai, Saudi Arabian currency, Israeli currency. You play that game with your money, you can end up making more money using money as a commodity than you can if you invested in the stock market. And that's what a lot of traders are doing today. The money traders today are making money by trading dollars on the international market rather than putting it in the stock market, because the stock market is vulnerable. Irv, do you think the instant trading now done on the internet has been helpful or harmful to the market? Well, there's no question in my mind that it has been helpful in some areas. It's a catch-22. It's helpful in some and hurts in other way. The instant transaction can sometimes give you a false reading, and the precipitous drop can create a panic. So you have to look at it as you play the market. You have to be very careful as to how instantaneous those market quotes are. I watch as the market rallies, but at the end of the day, people are taking the profits for the day out. Doesn't that hurt the investors who are in it for the long term? Yes, it is, but what do you expect the people to do, my dear friend? These are portfolio buyers that do that. It's not the individual person. The portfolio buyer is the one that goes in there, buys a bunch, takes that portfolio. He may have $3-4 billion in that portfolio. So if he makes 1 or 2% when he buys out of the market, he's all right. The long-term investor is usually the individual investor. That's not always the case, but that's generally what the case is. The portfolio buyer is going to get in, get out, make a profit so he can pay his investors. Irv, is there something called a product life cycle? I've heard of that, but I really, at this particular point, my dear friend, cannot identify what it is. I've heard something about product life cycle, but my mind right now is drawn a blank. But maybe in the next couple of seconds, Ron can pull that up. We have a line open now on the telephone line at 215-253-8877. And we do have room on the chat room for a couple more questions if you have them. Once again, the battle between the president and Rush Limbaugh is going to be the demise of Rush Limbaugh. There have been many broadcasters who have tried fighting the president, and every one of them have lost. The thing that I object to more than the buffoonery of Rush Limbaugh in speaking to CPAC the other last Saturday night is that I have no problem, and let me make myself perfectly clear because I'm in the industry, and it's amazing that because of all my criticism of the present talk show hosts, I haven't run into anybody saying, well, you're jealous. Let's take
Hi, Irv.
Hi.
Hi, Irv. This is Arlene.
Hi.
I said there is something called a product life cycle.
Okay, what is it?
And, there's, all products go through an introductory phase,
Right.
a growth phase, a maturity phase, and then a declining phase.
Right.
And that's what happened in the radio industry, the talk radio industry that you're talking about. You got in at the growth stage. I mean, Frank Ford, we would say, would be part of the introductory
Right.
stage. And at the maturity stage and at the declining stage, then there are a lot of competitors and the market starts to decline. So that accounts for the difference in the quality of personnel in the radio market today.
But what happened, in my opinion, in radio, Arlene, was the gross violation of the Federal Communication Law when they gave the opportunity for the syndicators to take over the broadcast industry. And that was a
But that is part and parcel of all product life cycles, just on a market basis anyway.
But
I'm not saying that there aren't violations, that
Right.
there weren't violations. I understand. I've been listening to you since days of Carl McIntyre.
Right.
But and I used to, when I was a young girl, I used to go see Frank Ford at
William
Spruce
Penn.
Street, was it 19th and Spruce or something
19th
like that?
of 19th of Walnut.
That's it.
Yeah.
So that's how long. But that's why there's a decline in the quality of personnel now, because this industry has reached is beyond its growth stage and is in its declining stage
Was
now.
that philosophy based on Vance Packard's idea of planned obsolescence years ago, Arlene?
Well, no. That's part of that's what's being taught as management theory in all of the universities today.
Right. So it would be, in other words, it's a burnout.
Yeah, exactly. You could call it like that.
Right,
So, I mean, that's why we have the situation we have.
Right.
So that's why we have to tune in to you Monday, Wednesday, and Friday to get a little bit of wisdom from us older folks who, like you say, don't know anything.
Thanks so much for calling, Arlene. I appreciate it. Take care. Let me go back to my complaint with Limbaugh and Hannity, Savage, Mike Gallagher. Glenn Beck has more or less moderated to a point where he's not that strong Republican. See, I have no problem with a person being a liberal or a person being conservative. In fact, I think there always should be loyal opposition. One ideology frightens me, as one religion frightens me. If there was one religion in the world, that would be a dictatorship. I don't like dictatorships. It's one of the reasons that I believe there should be a diversification of religion and let them all argue which one is right, because that keeps them from becoming a dictatorship. There are basically two political parties in America. Although we're not a two-party system, we're considered to be a two-party system. But there are approximately about 36 political parties recognized in the United States that have appeared on ballots in 50 states. The Libertarian Party, I think, has been on about 48 states. There are some parties that were on 3 states. The party that I was running for vice president in 1972 was on 3 states. So there are about 36 political parties. What disturbs me is the advocacy of the Republican Party constantly being jammed down the throat, 9 hours a day, 5 days a week, from Beck, Gallagher, Limbaugh, and Hannity. You want to be a conservative? Fine. Be an objective conservative. If you want to be a liberal on the air, be an objective liberal. But I find it very dangerous and unconstitutional and against Federal Communications guidelines that a person can sit behind a microphone on 300 stations or 600 stations and constantly advocate one political party. Now let's assume there's no question that Limbaugh is a Republican. There's no question that Hannity is a Republican. There's no question that Mike Gallagher is a Republican. There's no question in my mind that Dennis Prager is a Republican. None whatsoever. Or Mark Stein. Or Michael Savage. But is it fair, ladies and gentlemen, 9 to 15 hours a day for the Republican Party to get free advocacy on the air, while the Democrat Party cannot get its name mentioned unless it buys the time from the radio station? Number two, if I'm a Democratic candidate for office and I want to buy advertising time on a radio station, I don't want to spend $600-700 a minute for an advertising spot as my candidacy as a Democrat, when I've got a guy that's going to, in the middle of his Republican diatribe, they're going to play my 1-minute Democratic commercial that I paid $600 for. Is that fair? Is that fair? And that is my objection to the present tone of the broadcasting media today. It's not fair. The Democrat Party should not yell about a fairness doctrine. But if you want to be a Republican, Limbaugh, fine. Just don't be an advocate on the air using the word Republican. Just voice your conservatism. Voice your opposition to the present political atmosphere, the Obama. No problem. But it is not fair. It's un-American. And as I say, as far as I'm concerned, they should be shut down. America gives everybody an opportunity to talk. The unfortunate thing is when you're on radio, you have to buy the time. And the Democrat Party is being shut out of buying time on Republican advocates who are on the air 9 to 12 hours a day. It's not fair. And for those of you who are ditto heads, who are followers of Rush Limbaugh or the other gentleman I mentioned, think about it. Think about if they were all Democrats and a daily barrage of how good Democrats are and how good liberalism, how good it, and you as a Republican, you're not even allowed to mention your name. But if you wanted to buy time on that Democrat program, you would have to pay $300 to $600. Would you like it? Would you like it? Of course you wouldn't. Even NPR, which is criticized as being a liberal, there isn't one person on National Public Radio who has ever said that they were a Democrat. They may be liberal in their philosophy, but they've never once advocated voting Democrat. And now the big boogeyman is socialism. Well, apparently the communists are defeated, so you got no more communists. Now we got to invent another boogeyman called socialists. Well, why don't Limbaugh, or these people who are concerned about this country turning socialist, why don't you call Nelson Rockefeller and ask him if he's a socialist? Why don't you call Bernie Madoff and ask him if he's a socialist? Why don't you call the president of General Motors and ask him if he's a socialist? Why don't you call the president of PNC Bank, M&T Bank, Lehman, ask them if they're socialists? You people are being led by the nose that we're turning into a socialist country. Can you picture the Rockefellers becoming socialists? Can you picture the Kennedys becoming socialists? Can you picture the multi-billionaires in this country that make the Fortune 500 as socialists? Warren Buffett's a socialist? Are you people crazy? Are you ditto heads absolutely insane? There must be something in the water that you people are drinking. But if I hear socialism once on the air, I hear it 10 times a day. So point out to me who the rich in this country are. Go into the archives, find out who the multi-billionaires are, and tell me the name next week of who the socialists are in this country that are worth more than $10 million. It's a matter of public record. Name me all the people in this country who are rich who are socialists, and then tell me the country's moving to socialism. These bloviators are so, as I said, Hitler didn't have a college degree. Mussolini didn't have one. Alexander the Great didn't have one. Stalin didn't have one. Napoleon didn't have one. Batista didn't have one. Marcos didn't have one. The Shah of Iran didn't have one. He had a military degree. None of them had college degrees. So I can assume that the idiots, Mr. Limbaugh, that you are criticizing because they're graduates, are stupid because they're all graduates and hired you. So they must be idiots. Think about that, folks. I'm Irv Homer. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a great weekend.